Hello and welcome. There is nothing left for you to do tonight. Nothing to solve, nothing to remember, nothing to hold on to. You can let your shoulders drop away from your ears, let your jaw soften, let your hands rest wherever they have fallen. If these gentle journeys bring you peace, consider leaving a kind word, sharing this moment with another, or joining our growing flock of quiet dreamers. Comment your favorite animal and I might include it in the next video. Tonight we are going to travel very slowly across Australia. Across red sand and pale grass, through eucalyptus woodland and warm rainforest, in the company of kangaroos. You don't need to follow closely. You don't need to remember any of it. Let the facts drift past you like clouds. And if you fall asleep somewhere in the middle, that is exactly what this is for. Take one slow breath in and let it go. Let's begin. The word kangaroo is much wider than most people imagine. Technically, it refers only to the largest members of a family called macropods, a word that simply means big foot. Under that strict definition, the kangaroos are the red kangaroo, the eastern grey, the western grey, the antilopine kangaroo, and the wallaroos. That's it. A small and stately handful. But behind those few names stands a much larger family. Australia is home to more than 50 macropod species, a whole quiet nation of relatives. There are wallabies, smaller and quicker, tucked into scrub and heath. There are rock wallabies that live on cliff faces. And there are rat kangaroos, some no bigger than a rabbit, moving through the undergrowth in the dark while the continent sleeps. So when you picture a kangaroo, you are really picturing one branch of a very old, very generous family tree. Kangaroos are grazers, and grazing is a quiet kind of power. By feeding steadily on grasses and low plants, kangaroos shape the land around them. They keep some plants short and allow others to rise. They carry seeds from one place to another in their fur and in their digestion, planting things they will never see grow. And what passes through them returns to the soil, folding nutrients back into the ground. Their numbers rise and fall alongside the animals that hunt them, the dingo most of all, and alongside rainfall and drought and the slow turning of good years and hard ones. Nothing about it is rushed. It's simply a system finding its balance over and over across an entire continent. You're doing so well. There is nothing you need to do to be here properly. You are already doing it, just breathing, just resting, just letting the words arrive and pass. Notice how little effort that takes. Notice that you can let even that noticing go. Let your breath find its own rhythm now. It knows what to do. Kangaroos live almost everywhere in Australia, and each of the large species has claimed its own kind of country. The red kangaroo belongs to the arid interior, the vast open plains, the ochre soil, the long horizon that shimmers in the heat of the day and turns cold and clear at night. The eastern grey prefers the greener east, fertile woodland and forest, dappled shade, softer ground underfoot. The western grey moves through the southern shrublands and along coastal country, closer to sea air. The antilope kangaroo lives in the tropical north, in monsoonal woodland, where the year swings between wet and dry, and the wallaroos take the rocky, hilly places nobody else particularly wants, the escarpments and boulder fields, where they can find shade in the heat of the day and stand very still, watching the country below. Here is something that surprises almost everyone. Some kangaroos live in trees, high in the rainforest canopies of New Guinea, and in a small green corner of far northeastern Queensland live the tree kangaroos, the genus Dendrologus. There are somewhere between 10 and 14 species depending on how they are counted, and they are the only truly arboreal macropods in the world. They have shorter, broader feet than their grassland cousins, with strong curved claws and long tails for balance. Some of them weigh as much as 17 kilograms, and yet they move through the branches with a careful, considered grace, climbing, resting, sleeping curled high above the forest floor, in the warm green dark, with rain moving through the leaves above them. A kangaroo, asleep in a tree, in the rain. Hold that picture for a moment and then let it go. You are safe and you are exactly where you need to be. Whatever the day asked of you, it has finished asking. You gave it what you had, and now it's over, and the night has no requirements at all. Let the mattress hold your weight. Let it take the whole of it, your back, your legs, your head. You don't need to carry yourself anymore tonight. The 4 main kangaroo species are all doing well. Red, Eastern Gray, Western Gray, and antilope kangaroos are each listed as least concerned by the IUCN, widespread, abundant, and in no danger of vanishing. But not everyone in the family has been so fortunate. The black wallaroo, a shy dark macropod of the rocky Northern Territory escarpments, is listed as vulnerable, and the antilope kangaroo itself has been treated as near threatened in some assessments, as habitat pressures build in the tropical north. It's a reminder that a family can hold both things at once: abundance and fragility, side by side, in the same landscape. The red kangaroo is the largest living marsupial on Earth. A full-grown male can stand about 1.8 meters tall, around 5 feet 11 inches, and the very largest have reached close to 2 meters, 6 feet 7. They can weigh up to around 90 kilograms, 200 pounds of muscle and warmth and quiet attention. Picture him at dusk on an inland plain, upright, leaning back on the thick base of his tail, ears turning slowly toward a sound. Then a single push and he crosses the ground in long, low, almost soundless bounds, kicking up a little dust that hangs in the last of the light. Let yourself sink a little deeper in. Let yourself sink a little deeper now. You've come a long way today and you've arrived. There's nowhere else to get to. Your body already knows how to fall asleep. It has done it thousands of times without any help from you. All you have to do is stop standing in the way. Soften the space between your eyebrows. Soften your tongue. Let go. Kangaroo lifespans depend enormously on where a kangaroo lives. In the wild, life is generous but demanding. Many kangaroos live only 6 to 8 years on average. Some species reach around 12. Drought, predators, hard seasons, and long distances all take their toll. In zoos and sanctuaries with reliable food and shelter and care, the same animals routinely pass 20 years, and the oldest recorded individuals have reached somewhere near 25, 26, 27 years. The same body, the same species, given a gentler world, simply keeps going. Long before any of this, Australia belonged to giants. There was once an entire branch of kangaroos called the Sthenurines, the short-faced kangaroos. Their skulls were deep and blunt, almost like a hare's, and some of them were enormous. Certain lineages reached around 240 kilograms, several times the weight of the largest kangaroo alive today. They probably didn't hop, or at least not the way modern kangaroos do. Their skeletons suggest a striding, walking gait, one great foot after the other, and some may have moved on all fours. Imagine that. A kangaroo the size of a small horse, walking slowly through open woodland, reaching up into the branches for leaves. They are gone now, but they were here for a very long tea. Emmy, you're doing beautifully, truly. There is no wrong way to listen to this. If your attention wandered off and came back, that's fine. If you stopped following the words entirely, that's better still. Sleep isn't something you achieve. It's something that arrives once you've stopped waiting for it. Let the next few breaths be even slower than the last. Being enormous is a trick the kangaroos learned more than once. When researchers map out the kangaroo family tree, something interesting appears. Megafaunal body size didn't emerge just once in one lucky lineage. It arose independently in several different branches as open woodlands spread across Australia from the late Miocene onward. As the forests thinned and the grasslands widened, again and again, separate groups of kangaroos answered the same landscape in the same way, by growing large. Different animals, different times, the same quiet solution. And the last fact for tonight is perhaps the loveliest of them all. The closest living relative of those giant short-faced kangaroos is not a giant at all. Ancient DNA, recovered from a Simasthenerus specimen around 45,000 years old, points to a small, quiet, threatened animal called the banded hair wallaby, Lagostrophus fasciatus. It weighs less than 2 kilograms. It has faint dark bands across its lower back, and it feeds at night in dense scrub on a handful of islands off Western Australia. And it is the living thread connecting us to a lost world of walking giants. Something very small, carrying something very old, still here. So, let's gather it up gently and then set it down. Tonight you learned that kangaroo is a narrow word inside a wide family of more than 50 macropods. That kangaroos are grazers who shape the land they feed on. That they've spread into nearly every Australian habitat: the Red Desert, the Eastern Forest, the Southern Coast, the tropical North, the Rocky Hills. That some of them live in rainforest trees. That the big four are thriving, while quieter relatives like the black wallaroo are not. that the red kangaroo is the largest marsupial alive, up to 2 meters and 90 kilograms, that they live 6 to 8 years in the wild and beyond 20 in care, that giant short-faced kangaroos once walked here, some weighing 240 kilograms, that great size evolved several separate times as the woodlands opened, and that the tiny banded hair wallaby is the last living link to those vanished giants. You don't need to keep any of it. Let it settle somewhere below thinking, the way sand settles in still water. Let the desert go quiet. Let the rainforest go dark. Rest now. There are 90 more facts waiting, and they'll wait as long as you need. Good night. Nothing has changed. You are still resting. The room is still dark. The only thing moving is your breath in and out without you having to arrange it. In this next stretch, we'll leave the map behind and come closer, close enough to watch how a kangaroo is actually made, how it carries its young, how it moves, what happens inside a body built entirely around one gentle, springing motion. Let your eyes stay closed. Let one more breath go. Kangaroos are marsupials, and that word carries a whole different way of being born. A kangaroo joey arrives into the world impossibly early, blind, hairless, and smaller than a jelly bean. Cannot see and it cannot hear, but it can climb. Guided only by touch and smell, it makes its way up through its mother's fur to a fold of skin on her belly called the marsupium, the pouch, and there it attaches to a teat and stays. The pouch is warm and dark and lined with soft skin. It stretches as the joey grows. Inside it, the small animal finishes becoming itself. Growing fur, opening its eyes, gradually filling the space. For months, while the world outside carries on without it. Everything it needs is a few centimeters away. There is nothing for it to do but grow and be carried. And they are the only large mammals in the world who travel by hopping. Plenty of small animals hop. Mice, hares, jerboas, spring hares. But at the scale of a full-grown kangaroo, 60, 70, 90 kilograms, nothing else on Earth has made bounding its primary way of getting anywhere. Every other large mammal walks or runs or trots. The kangaroos alone chose the other thing, and they have been doing it across an entire continent for millions of years. You're doing so well. There's nothing to keep track of here. If you missed the last few sentences, they weren't important. None of it is important, and that's precisely the point. This is simply a voice in a dark room, keeping you company while you let go. Let your shoulders release once more. Let your hands go VY. They are faster than you would think. A kangaroo's comfortable cruising pace, the speed it can hold across open country, hour after hour without strain, is around 20 to 25 kilometers an hour, 12 to 16 miles an hour, faster than a person can run, held effortlessly, almost lazily. And when a kangaroo truly needs to move, it can sprint at up to 70 kilometers an hour, 43 miles an hour, for a short burst across a flat plain, in a series of enormous silent bounds, there and then gone, with only the dust settling behind it. Then there is the tail. The tail is the secret. A kangaroo's tail is long, thick at the base, muscular all the way down, and it does at least 3 different jobs. While hopping, it acts as a counterbalance, swinging opposite to the body, keeping the whole animal level and steady through the air, the way a tightrope walker's pole keeps them true. At slow speeds, it becomes a 5th leg, bearing real weight, pushing the animal forward. And in water, it becomes a paddle. Kangaroos are capable swimmers, and when they swim, the tail propels them, moving side to side while the hind legs kick independently. Something they cannot do on land at all. 1 appendage. 3 completely different lives. Rest here for a moment. You've earned it. Not because of anything you did today, you don't have to earn rest, but because you are a body that has been awake for a long time now, and it is finally allowed to stop. That's all. That's the whole requirement. Breathe in slowly, and let it fall out on its own. Here's a strange one. Kangaroos essentially cannot walk backwards. Between those enormous feet, the stiff mechanics of the hind legs, and that heavy tail behind them, a coordinated reverse is close to impossible. A kangaroo can pivot. It can shuffle a short distance in reverse with real effort and very poor balance. But it cannot simply back up the way you or I would. It's why the kangaroo appears on Australia's coat of arms, an animal that only moves forward. Whether or not the biology deserves quite that much poetry, it remains true. To go somewhere else, a kangaroo has to turn around first and face it. There is something restful in that. No going back, only turning and going And when a kangaroo is moving slowly, it does something wonderfully odd. It's called pentapedal locomotion, 5-footed walking. The kangaroo leans forward and plants its tail and both forelimbs on the ground, forming a stable tripod. Then, resting its weight there, it swings both hind legs forward together in one motion. Then it plants the feet, leans forward again onto tail and hands, and repeats. It looks ungainly, slow, rolling, almost comical. But it works, and the tail does genuine labor in it, pushing the animal along with as much force as the front limbs combined. A true 5th leg, not a metaphor. So a grazing kangaroo, moving quietly across a paddock at dusk, is walking on 5 limbs. And when it decides to go somewhere, it rises up and uses only 2. You're doing beautifully. Notice that you haven't had to try. The breathing happened. The settling happened. Your body has been quietly doing all of this while your mind listened to stories about tails and feet. That's what it's like to fall asleep. It happens off to the side while you're looking at something else. Now, the part that makes biologists genuinely marvel. For almost every running animal, going faster costs more. A horse burns more energy at a gallop than a trot. A person burns more sprinting than jogging. Speed has a price, and the price keeps climbing. For kangaroos, past a certain point, it more or less stops climbing. As a kangaroo hops faster, it subtly changes the posture of its hind legs, so that the great Achilles tendon at the back of each ankle is stretched harder with every landing. The tendon takes that load, holds it for a fraction of a second, and gives it back. More speed means more stretch, and more stretch means more free energy returned. The extra muscular work that faster hopping demands is very nearly cancelled out by the extra energy the tendons hand back. And so, across a remarkably wide range of speeds, the cost of being a kangaroo stays almost the same. Their tendons, it turns out, do more of the work than their muscles do. When researchers measure what's actually driving a fast hop, the majority of the mechanical work comes not from muscle contraction but from elastic recoil, springs, not engines. Some analyses suggest that this elastic storage saves up to around 70% of the energy the animal would otherwise have to burn. Think about what that means. A kangaroo crossing the desert at speed is, to a large degree, not running. It is bouncing. The ground gives back most of what it takes. The animal is closer to a ball in motion than to a machine grinding forward. Falling and being returned, again and again across the red earth. Let that image carry you a little further down. Falling and being returned. Falling and being returned. There's no effort in it. There's nothing to hold up. You can let yourself go the same way now. Down and down, softly, with something underneath you the whole time. None of this is free, of course. Something has to bear it. During a fast hop, the forelimbs are essentially doing nothing, carried, unloaded, along for the ride. Everything passes through the hind legs. The long bones of the leg and the tendons behind them take forces close to the limits of what biological material can withstand, over and over, thousands of times, every day of the animal's life. So those bones are built differently. Their shape, their thickness, the way they are laid down and continually rebuilt by living cells. All of it is tuned to survive impact that would break something ordinary. The larger the kangaroo, the more extraordinary this engineering has to be. Every quiet bound across a paddock is a structure holding at the edge of its own tolerance, and holding easily. And the last fact of this segment brings the whole picture together. Hopping is not cheap in absolute terms. A red kangaroo moving at a steady pace across level ground burns roughly 10 times its resting metabolic rate. That is real, hard work. The animal is genuinely laboring. But because those elastic tendons keep recycling energy back into every stride, the cost per distance traveled barely rises as it goes faster. Most runners pay steeply for speed. The kangaroo, past a point, more or less stops paying. It's why they can cross such vast, dry, empty country in search of rain and grass, traveling further than seems reasonable, on less than seems possible, one long bounce at a time. Let's set it all down now, gently. Tonight you learned that kangaroos are marsupials, whose joeys are born tiny and finish growing in a warm pouch called the marsupium. That they are the only large mammals that hop as their main way of traveling. That they cruise at 20 to 25 kilometers an hour and can sprint to 70. That the tail is a counterbalance, a fifth leg, and a swimming paddle all at once. That they essentially cannot walk backwards. that at slow speeds they move on 5 limbs, tail, 2 hands, 2 feet, swinging the back legs forward together. That their hopping becomes strangely efficient at speed as the Achilles tendon stores and returns more energy. That those tendons may save up to 70% of the energy the animal would otherwise burn. That the hind bones are built to survive forces near their absolute limit, while the front limbs simply ride along. And that hopping costs about 10 times resting metabolism, yet barely gets more expensive the faster they go. You don't need to hold any of it. Let the numbers dissolve. Let the desert go quiet again. Somewhere out there a kangaroo is moving through the dark, spending almost nothing, going a very long way. And you are here spending nothing at all, going now her. Your part in this is finished. There's nothing to understand and nothing to keep. If you drifted off during the last stretch and you're only half here now, that's exactly right. Stay exactly that far away. This time will go inside the senses. What a kangaroo sees, what it hears, what it smells on the night air, and how it tells the others. One slow breath in, and let it leave. A kangaroo sees almost everything at once. Its eyes sit high on the skull and far apart, out toward the sides, the arrangement of an animal that is watched, rather than one that watches. In some macropods, the field of view stretches beyond 300 degrees, nearly a full circle. Standing still in open grassland, a kangaroo can see behind itself without turning its head. Only about 25 degrees of that field overlaps between the two eyes, a narrow band of true depth perception, straight ahead. That's the trade. A predator's eyes face forward and judge distance precisely. A prey animal's eyes face outward and miss nothing. So the whole horizon is always arriving softly, all the time. Not scanned, just present. The colors in that world are gentler than ours. Kangaroos are dichromats. They carry 2 kinds of cone in the eye, one tuned to blue light, one to green, roughly in the range of 420 to 500 nanometers. Within that range, they are exquisitely sensitive. They can tell apart shades of blue and green that would look identical to us. But there is no red cone. The yellow to red end of the spectrum, where our sunsets and our warning signs live, is largely absent for them, muted or simply another shade of something else. So picture the outback as a kangaroo receives it. That famous red earth is not red. The whole desert resolves into cool blues and endless subtle greens, finely graded, with the warm end of the world quietly missing. A softer place, in a way. A place with the loud colors taken out. You're doing so well. Nothing is required of you here. You're not being tested on any of this. All you're doing is lying still in the dark, being kept company. And that's a complete and sufficient way to spend the next few minutes. Let your face soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let the pillow take the weight of your head entirely. Their hearing is tuned with the same precision. Eastern gray kangaroos hear best somewhere around 2 to 3.5 kilohertz. That's their peak, the frequency where the faintest sound will still reach them. Their hearing works well from about 1 kilohertz up to 18, then falls away above that. And that window is not an accident. It sits exactly where the meaningful sounds of their world live. The rustle of movement in dry grass, the calls of other kangaroos, and the low, flat thump of a hind foot striking the ground. They are built, quite literally, to hear each other. And each ear moves on its own. A kangaroo's ears are large and cupped and mounted on muscle that can swivel each of them separately through something close to 180 degrees. One ear can turn back toward a sound behind while the other stays forward. Both can sweep independently, quietly, without the animal moving anything else at all. Picture a kangaroo grazing at dusk, head down, jaw working slowly, while above it 2 dark ears rotate like small satellite dishes, tracking the world in different directions. That independence is what lets it place a sound in space. Not just something is out there, but they're at that angle, that far. In open country, where you can see far but the danger is often still invisible, that ability is everything. Rest a little deeper now. There's no next thing. Nothing is waiting on the other side of this. The night has no agenda and neither do you. Let your breath slow down without pushing it. It will slow on its own if you simply stop asking it to hurry. And in that vast open country, a sound can travel a very long way. Under ideal outback conditions, flat land, still air, the deep quiet of a desert night, kangaroos have been reported to detect sounds from as far as about 2 kilometers away. Distant thumps from other kangaroos, the movement of something that shouldn't be moving, 2 kilometers of silence, and then one small signal arriving across it, and every ear in the mob turning at once. It means a kangaroo is never really alone. Even spread across a plain, out of sight of one another, they remain connected by a thin thread of sound, a shared nervous system stretched across the arc. They also read the world by smell. In experiments, Western gray kangaroos were offered the scents of predators, dingo droppings, and fox. And the kangaroos did something interesting. They approached. They came in, and they sniffed carefully, gathering information. And then, having learned what they needed, they left quickly and avoided that place afterward. What's remarkable is that they respond this way both to the dingo, which has shared this continent with them for thousands of years, and to the red fox, which arrived only in the last century or so. The nose is not simply running an ancient script. It is assessing, taking in something new and deciding what it means. Curiosity first, then caution, then distance. You're doing beautifully. Notice how little of you is still working. Your hands have gone quiet. Your legs are heavy. Somewhere along the way, your body stopped waiting for instructions and simply started letting go. Let that continue. You don't have to supervise it. When a kangaroo is frightened, it speaks with its feet. Almost every member of the macropod family, the great kangaroos, the wallabies, even the small rat kangaroos, will strike the ground with one or both hind feet to produce a hard, flat, carrying thump. It's the most widespread alarm signal in the whole family. It happens most often during predator encounters, and it probably does two jobs at once. It warns the mob, something is here, lift your heads, and it may speak to the predator directly. I have seen you. Whatever you were planning depended on my not seeing you, and I do. One sound, low and blunt, traveling out across the grass in every direction into all those turning ears. And if the danger closes in, kangaroos will take to the water. They are strong, capable swimmers. Pursued, they will enter rivers and floodwaters without hesitation, propelling themselves with that great tail while the hind legs kick freely, moving independently in water in a way they never can on land. And there, in the water, a hunted animal can become something else. Large kangaroos have been observed turning to face a pursuing predator in the shallows, taking hold of it with their forepaws and holding it under, sometimes drowning it. It's a startling thing to picture, and it's worth sitting with for a moment. The gentle grazing animal, chest deep in brown floodwater, entirely calm, doing what it needs to do, then letting go and swimming on. Let that image drift off downstream. You don't need to carry anything tonight. Not the strange parts, not the soft parts, not anything from your own day. Let the water take all of it. Sink a little further into the B. D. Now, when do kangaroos actually sleep? They are crepuscular and nocturnal. The heat of the day is for resting. Lying in shade, often stretched out on their sides, sometimes flat on their backs with their legs out, dozing through the worst of the sun. They will scrape away the warm topsoil to reach cooler earth and settle into it. The real business of being a kangaroo happens after dusk and before dawn. The grazing, the moving, the quiet social life of the mob, unfolding in the blue hours at either end of the night. And mothers carrying young joeys rest most of all. Some reports have them resting up to 22 hours a day, almost the entire cycle spent still, warm, conserving everything, with a small sleeping animal folded into the pouch against them. 22 hours of rest. Let that be permission if you need in. Why? And the last fact tonight is about the word itself. Kangaroo is not an English word. It comes from Gugu Yimithir, a language of the people of far North Queensland, near where the Endeavour River meets the sea. In 1770, Cook's ship was damaged and beached there for weeks of repairs. In that time, Joseph Banks recorded a local name for a large dark macropod, writing it variously as kangaroo, kangaroo, from the Gugu Yimithir word gangaroo, which referred specifically to one particular animal, the large black-gray kangaroo. It became the first Aboriginal word ever borrowed into English, and it's still the word we use for the whole family now, far beyond the single species it originally named. So every time anyone anywhere says kangaroo, they are speaking a small piece of Gugu Yimithir, a word from one riverbank in one language, still traveling 2.5 centuries later, all the way to this dark room tonight. Let's gather it up and then let it go. Tonight you learned that kangaroos see across more than 300 degrees, with only a narrow band of overlap for depth, that they see in blues and greens with the red end of the world largely absent, that their hearing peaks around 2 to 3.5 kilohertz, right where the sounds that matter live, that each ear swivels independently through nearly 180 degrees, that in open country they can catch a sound from 2 kilometers away, that they investigate predator scents by smell, then avoid them, old predators and new ones alike, that nearly all macropods thump a hind foot as an alarm signal, that they swim strongly and will use deep water against a pursuer, that they rest through the heat and live at dusk and dawn, with nursing mothers resting up to 22 hours a day, and that the word kangaroo comes from the Gugu Yimidhir Ganguru. None of it needs keeping. Let the ears stop turning. Let the plane go silent 2 kilometers in every direction, with nothing crossing eye. Teeth will carry on now, softer again. This next stretch is the warmest part of the whole story. It's about mothers and small sleeping things, and a kind of care so precise it seems almost impossible. You don't need to stay awake for it. If anything, this is a good place to let go entirely. One breath in, and let it fall. A kangaroo's pregnancy is astonishingly short. After only about 31 to 36 days, the joey is born, and it is barely an animal yet, around 2 centimeters long, roughly the size of a grain of rice. Pink, hairless, blind, with hind legs that are little more than buds. And yet it isn't helpless. What it has completely. Its forelimbs are already strong and tipped with tiny claws, and its sense of smell is already working. Within moments of birth it begins to climb, up through its mother's fur unaided, across a distance that must feel to it like crossing a country, until it reaches the pouch, slips inside, finds a teat and attaches. The whole journey takes just a few minutes, and then it is warm and dark, and it doesn't have to do anything difficult ever again for a very long time. Because inside the pouch, time slows right down. Depending on the species, a joey will stay in there for something between 120 and 400 days. Months and months of warmth. Its eyes open in there. Its fur grows in there. Its legs lengthen and strengthen in there. In the dark, unhurried. At around 4 months, it begins to change position, turning, shifting, and eventually pushing its head out into the light for the first time. A small face appearing above the rim of the pouch, blinking at the world, while the rest of it stays safely inside. Then, cautiously, it starts to reach out and take a mouthful of grass. Still riding, still carried, just beginning to taste what the outside is made of. You're doing so well. You have been carried too at some point. Everyone has. And tonight you're being held by something simple. A mattress, a blanket, a dark room, a voice that isn't asking anything of you. Let yourself be held by it. Let your body get heavier. Now here is one of the strangest and most elegant things in all of biology. A female kangaroo can pause a pregnancy. Within a day of giving birth, she can mate again. a new embryo begins, and then at around 70 to 100 cells, a tiny hollow ball called a blastocyst, it simply stops. It doesn't die. It doesn't implant. It waits. This is called embryonic diapause. That paused life can hang there, suspended, for months until conditions change. Until the rains come and the grass returns. Or until the joey currently occupying the pouch grows up and leaves it. And then, quietly, a signal passes, and the waiting embryo starts growing again. It means a kangaroo mother is never really starting from nothing. In hard years she holds. In good years she goes. The next generation is already there, patient, asking for nothing, ready whenever the world is, which leads to something remarkable. A single mother can be supporting 3 offspring at once. There is the dormant embryo in the uterus, paused, waiting, costing her almost nothing. There is a tiny joey in the pouch, attached to a teat, still forming, drinking constantly. And there is an older joey outside the pouch, weaned from the pouch but not from her, a young at foot who still returns to drink, ducking its head in to feed while standing beside her on the grass. 3 stages of one continuous line of care, running at the same time in the same body. The past, the present, and the possible all being held together. Let that settle into you. Everything at its own stage. Nothing rushed. Nothing forced ahead of its time. That's what tonight is too. Your body is somewhere on its own way down into sleep, and it doesn't need to be hurried. Let it arrive when it arrives. VS. And the milk is where it becomes almost unbelievable. Kangaroo milk is not one substance. It changes continuously over months, tracking exactly what the growing joey needs. In red kangaroos, the total solids in the milk start at around 11% in the earliest days of pouch life, thin, watery, easy for a rice grain animal to take. And as the joey grows, it thickens. By around 235 days, when the young one is leaving the pouch for good, it has climbed to roughly 26%. More than twice as rich. The character of it changes too. Early on, carbohydrates lead, sugars for a tiny body doing the work of building itself. Later, fat takes over as the main source of energy, fueling a much larger animal now hopping about in the cold night air. Then, as weaning approaches, it gently tapers away again. It's not a food. It's more like a long, slow, perfectly timed set of instructee. Ons, you're doing beautifully. There's nothing to grasp here. Let the numbers slide past like scenery from a train window. You're not meant to catch them, only to watch them go. Let your breathing go slower still. And now the part that genuinely astonishes me. A kangaroo mother can produce 2 completely different milks at the same time. She has 4 teats. If she has a tiny new joey in the pouch and an older one at foot, they will use different teats, and each gland produces something different. From one, a low-fat, high-protein milk, suited to a minute animal still building tissue. From the neighboring one, a rich, high-fat milk, for a big young one bounding around outside and burning energy fast. 2 recipes, 1 body, adjacent glands working to different instructions at the same moment. It's called concurrent asynchronous lactation, and it means each offspring receives exactly the milk for its own stage of life. Not an average, not a compromise. Each one gets its ow. And underneath that, the machinery is finer still. Researchers can watch specific proteins appear and disappear in kangaroo milk on a schedule. In red kangaroos, a protein called whey acidic protein, along with another called cystatin, rises after about 150 days, and then drops away around day 200, right about when the joey first leaves the pouch. And at that exact turning point, something new arrives. A protein simply called late lactation protein, which appears then and stays through the rest of the nursing period. Genes switching on and off in sequence, in time with a small animal's life. The milk knows what week it is. Rest a little deeper now. Nothing in you needs adjusting. Whatever your body is doing right now, it's doing it correctly the way it has always known how. Let your shoulders drop one more time. Let your hands stay exactly where they fall. And the milk also listens to the world outside. In wild populations, in years when the forage is poor and the country is dry, the milk carries less protein and less fat. The mother gives what she has, and what she has depends on the rain. And there's a subtler pattern still. Females in good condition who are nursing sons tend to produce higher protein milk than those nursing daughters. A small, condition-dependent tilt in how much is invested, and in whom. It's a quiet reminder that a kangaroo mother is not sealed off from her landscape. The state of the grass, the state of the sky, her own reserves, all of it flows through her and reaches the joey as a slightly different me. Some simple anatomy for a moment. Female kangaroos carry the pouch on the belly, opening upward with 4 teats inside, which is precisely what allows 2 different aged young to feed at once, each from its own. Males have no pouch at all, and are recognizable by a prominent scrotum sitting forward of the tail, which becomes more pronounced with age. Straightforward, from the outside. Nothing hidden. You could tell at a glance across a paddock. And the last fact tonight is about keeping that small world clean. Pouch should be a difficult place. It's warm, enclosed, humid, and it contains a helpless animal producing waste for months on end. By rights, it ought to be a haven for infection. It isn't, and that's the result of 2 things working together. The first is simple devotion. The mother licks the pouch out daily, more intensively around the time of birth, cleaning away debris and waste with her tongue, reaching deep inside. The second is chemistry. The skin of the pouch and its sweat glands secrete antimicrobial compounds, lysozyme, dermcidin, lactoferrin, while the milk itself delivers antibodies and its own antimicrobial molecules. Layer upon layer of protection, produced continuously, without any effort or attention at all. And so the pouch stays remarkably free of infection. A small, warm, safe room, cleaned every day, defended by its own walls. That's the image to keep as you go under. A dark, warm space, sealed against everything, with something very small asleep inside it. Entirely yes. 8. Let's set it all down. Tonight you learned that after only 31 to 36 days, a joey is born the size of a grain of rice and climbs unaided to the pouch. That it stays in there for 120 to 400 days, first peeking out at around 4 months. That a female can pause a pregnancy, holding a 70 to 100 cell embryo in suspension until conditions improve. That she can support 3 offspring at once. 1 paused, 1 in the pouch, 1 at foot. That her milk thickens from about 11% solids to 26% as the joey grows, shifting from sugars to fats. That she can produce 2 entirely different milks at the same time from adjacent glands. That specific milk proteins switch on and off in step with the joey's development. That the milk thins in 4 years and varies with her condition and her offspring's sex. That females have a pouch with 4 teats. And that daily grooming and a suite of antimicrobial compounds keep that pouch almost entirely free of infection. You don't need to hold any of it. Let it go the way the mother lets a grown joey go, gently and without worry. Rest now. Let's keep going. Slower now. This stretch is about survival in a dry country. How a kangaroo eats, how it cools itself, how it holds onto water in a place that offers very little. This quiet material. Nothing dramatic happens in it. That's rather the point. Breathe in and let it go. Kangaroos are herbivores and unhurried ones. They eat grasses mostly, along with leaves, ferns, herbs, and whatever green things the season provides. And like cattle, they process it twice, bringing food back up from the stomach to chew again, slowly, patiently extracting what a first pass missed. Their stomachs are large and chambered, full of microbes doing the real work, breaking down tough plant fiber that no mammal could digest alone. It's a partnership and it takes time. Hours of standing and chewing and standing. But there is one crucial difference from a cow, and we'll come back to it properly at the end of tonight. Where cattle release enormous volumes of methane, kangaroos release almost none at all. Something inside them handles it differently. Hold that in the back of your mind. We'll return to it. Now the heat. Australia in summer is genuinely dangerous. Ground temperatures climb far past anything a body should tolerate, and there is often no shade worth the name and no water for many kilometers. Kangaroos have no simple answer to this. They can't sweat their way out of it the way we do. So they use 2 tools together. Panting, which moves air across wet surfaces inside the body, and saliva, spread deliberately over the outside of it. And their saliva is unusual. The mandibular glands produce a thin, low osmolarity fluid, watery, dilute, and therefore extremely good at evaporating. It's almost purpose-built as a coolant, not a byproduct being repurposed. 2. Oh, you're doing so well. Notice how little heat there is in you right now. Your body has already begun cooling itself for sleep, That's a real thing that happens, a slight drop in core temperature as the night takes over. You don't have to help it. It's already underwater. Why? And in truly severe heat, that saliva does the heavy lifting. When a red kangaroo is under real thermal stress, its salivary flow increases dramatically. The glands opening up, producing far more than they would on an ordinary day. And in those extreme conditions, saliva licking can account for a large share of the animal's total evaporative heat loss. More than panting in some circumstances, there's a reason for the division of labor. Heavy panting for hours has a cost. It disturbs the balance of gases in the blood, pushing the body's acid-base chemistry off-center. Saliva spreading cools without that penalty. So the animal uses both, shifting the burden between them, panting when it must, licking when it can, and stays in balance through hours of heat that would flatten most things. It's worth picturing what this actually looks like. A kangaroo in the worst part of the afternoon. It has scraped a hollow in the shade, down to cooler soil and settled into it. It's largely still, and then, unhurriedly, it lifts a forearm to its mouth and licks along the inside of it, from wrist toward elbow, laying down a thin film of saliva on the sparsely furred skin. Then the other forearm, then the chest. Underneath that skin, close to the surface, run networks of fine blood vessels. Warm blood passes through them, the moisture above evaporates, and heat leaves the body with it. Then it rests, and after a while it does it again. That slow, methodical licking is one of the great images of the Australian summer. An animal cooling itself by hand, a little at a time all afternoon. Rest here for a while. Nothing needs solving tonight. There's no heat to escape and nothing to endure. You're in the coolest, safest, quietest part of your day, and it is entirely yours. Let your arms be heavy. Let your legs be heavier still. Those forelimbs, by the way, are far more capable than they look. Kangaroo arms seem almost like an afterthought next to those enormous legs, short, slight, held close to the chest. But they are genuinely dexterous. Kangaroos use their forepaws to grasp and turn food while eating, to pull branches down toward the mouth, to groom their fur and faces, and to handle objects with real precision. And mothers use them for the most delicate work of all. She uses her forepaws to guide a newborn toward the pouch, to open and clean the pouch rim, to hold and shift a joey inside it, to reach in and tidy around something the size of a bean without harming it. Fine motor control in small hands doing careful work. There's something very human in that picture. A mother's hands making small adjustments, tending something precious. Now water, or rather the absence of it. Desert kangaroos have extraordinary kidneys. In red kangaroos and Euros, the rate at which the kidneys filter the blood is low, and the rate at which urine is produced is lower still. Very little goes out, and what does go out is remarkably concentrated. A red kangaroo can produce urine at up to around 4,000 milliosmoles per kilogram, enormously more concentrated than our own. Thick renal medullae, the deep inner tissue of the kidney, and highly efficient reabsorption of urea allow the body to draw back nearly every usable drop before letting anything go. It means a kangaroo can go long stretches without drinking, taking most of its water from the plants it eats and the dew on them at dawn. The desert gives very little. The kidney simply refuses to waste any of it. You're doing beautifully. Whatever's left of the day, you can stop holding it now. You've carried it far enough. Set it down at the edge of the bed and leave it there. Let one more breath out, longer than the last, and you can see the desert written directly into the shape of the organ. There's a measurement called relative medullary thickness, essentially how deep the concentrating machinery of the kidney runs. In red kangaroos, animals of the arid interior, it sits around 6. In eastern greys, who live in wetter, greener eastern country, it's about 5.2. And the performance follows exactly. Reds can concentrate urine to somewhere between roughly 3,100 and 4,000 milliosmoles per kilogram. Eastern greys reach around 2,400 to 2,750. Two closely related animals. One built for the red center, one for the coastal forests. And you can read which is which from the inside of a kidney without ever seeing where it lay. The tuning goes deeper still, down to the level of a single molecule. There's a hormone, vasopressin, that tells the kidney to hold on to water. It works by docking with a receptor, the V2 receptor, in the kidney tissue. In most mammals, that system stays fairly quiet until water is genuinely short, and then it switches on. In arid-adapted marsupials, including red kangaroos, that receptor appears to have raised baseline activity. It's partly on already. The set point has been shifted, so strong water conservation happens even when hormone levels are low. In other words, the desert animals aren't waiting for the emergency. Conserving water isn't their response to drought. It's simply their resting state. The default has moved. Let yourself move toward your own default now. Nothing switched on. Nothing on alert. Just the quiet baseline of a body that has been given permission to stop. Sink a little foo. There. And now, at last, back to the methane. When researchers put kangaroos and sheep side by side, feeding them the same diet and measuring what came out in their breath, the difference was stark. The sheep produced methane in the way ruminants always do, steadily, substantially. The kangaroos produced almost none. Negligible amounts, far below the ruminants, despite fermenting their food in a broadly similar way, in a similar chamber at the front of the gut. Same problem, same basic solution, completely different exhaust. The reason lies in which microbes got the job. All this fermentation produces hydrogen, and that hydrogen has to go somewhere. In a cow or a sheep, specialized microbes called methanogens take the hydrogen and carbon dioxide and combine them into methane, which the animal then simply breathes away. Energy lost, and a potent greenhouse gas released. The kangaroo foregut runs a different community. It's rich in acetogenic bacteria, which take that same hydrogen and carbon dioxide and make acetate instead. a short-chain fatty acid the kangaroo can absorb and burn as fuel. It's called reductive acetogenesis, and it's a quietly beautiful piece of chemistry. The same raw materials routed down a different path. What would have been waste becomes food, and what would have warmed the atmosphere never forms at all. Nothing spare, nothing wasted, just a very old animal in a very dry country, keeping everything at ca. Let's gather it up now and put it down. Tonight you learned that kangaroos are herbivores who rechew their food like cattle but release almost no methane. That in extreme heat they cool themselves by panting and by spreading thin, low osmolarity saliva over their bodies. That in severe heat stress, saliva licking can carry much of the total evaporative cooling, sparing them the acid-base cost of constant panting. That the behavior itself is slow and deliberate. Forearms first, then chest over and over through the afternoon. That their small forelimbs are genuinely dexterous, handling food, grooming, and tending joeys and the pouch. That desert kangaroos have exceptional water-conserving kidneys, concentrating urine up to around 4,000 milliosmoles per kilogram. That kidney structure matches habitat, deeper medullae and stronger concentration in arid reds than in eastern grays. That their vasopressin receptors may run partly active by default, making conservation the resting state. That in trials against sheep they emitted almost no methane, and that their gut microbes route hydrogen into acetate rather than methane, turning waste into fuel. None of it needs keeping. Let the heat go out of the day. Let the afternoon end. This stretch is about company, how kangaroos live alongside each other, how they play, how they speak, and about the people who have known them longest. There's nothing here you need to follow closely. Let it come and go. Breathe in slowly, and let it leave. Kangaroos live in groups called mobs. A mob might be 3 or 4 animals, or it might be well over 100, spread across open country in the cool of the evening. And it isn't a fixed thing. Membership shifts constantly. Individuals drift out, others drift in, groups merge and split again according to the grass, the water, and the weather. Within a mob, there is usually a dominant male, a big older animal, often called a boomer, and during the breeding season his position becomes more visible. He moves among the females and other males give way. But it's a loose sort of order, not a hierarchy anyone enforces every minute. More like a shared understanding, held quietly, across a large group of animals feeding in the dark. Here's something delightful. Most wild kangaroos are left-handed. When researchers watched red and eastern gray kangaroos going about ordinary tasks, bringing food to the mouth, grooming, pulling at a branch, handling an object, a clear pattern appeared. Not just individual preferences, which many animals have, but a preference across the whole population, leaning the same way, to the left, consistently. True population-level handedness was long thought to be a rather human peculiarity. And here it is, in an animal separated from us by 160 million years of evolution, quietly favoring the same side over and over on the grasslands of Austral. You're doing so well. Notice which hand of yours is more relaxed right now. You probably can't tell, and you don't need to. Let them both go. Let your fingers uncurl if they're curled. Nothing in you needs to be gripping anything. And there's a good idea about why. The species with strong limb preferences are the ones that habitually stand and move upright: red kangaroos, eastern greys, the tall bipedal grazers. The species that don't show it are the more quadrupedal ones, like the tree kangaroos, who spend their lives on 4 limbs in the canopy, which suggests something rather profound, that standing up may be what does it. Once the forelimbs are freed from carrying weight, they become available for other work: reaching, holding, manipulating. And once they're doing skilled work, the brain seems to begin specializing, sending that work preferentially to one side. It's the same story in outline that's told about our own ancestors. Stand up, free the hands, and handedness follows. 2 entirely separate lineages, arriving at the same place from opposite ends of the world. The kangaroo also stands on Australia's coat of arms. There it is, in formal heraldry. A shield in the center bearing the badges of the 6 states, wreathed in golden wattle, with a red kangaroo supporting one side and an emu supporting the other. It was granted in its current form in 1912, and it's on the passports, the coins, the government letterheads, an animal made official. The most commonly repeated explanation for the pairing is that both creatures find it very difficult to move backwards, and so both suggest a nation that only goes forward. Whether that reasoning was truly behind the original choice is debated, but it has stuck, and it's the story most Australians will tell you. 2 animals holding up a shield, neither of them able to take a step back. Let yourself go a little heavier now. You don't have to hold anything up either. Not tonight. Whatever you were supporting today you can put down. The bed is doing all of it now. Feel the weight of your body arriving fully into the mattress. Some sense of numbers. In the rangelands where commercial harvesting is managed, kangaroo populations are counted carefully by aerial and ground survey each year, and the figures are large. Western gray kangaroos in commercial harvest zones were estimated at around 3.8 million individuals in 2020. And that's one species in one set of zones. Across the main species and the wider rangelands, the totals run to many millions, rising in good rainfall years and falling steeply through drought. These are among the most abundant large wild mammals anywhere on Earth. Millions of large animals, moving across a continent in the dark, mostly unseen by anyone, and people have lived alongside them and hunted them for tens of thousands of years. Aboriginal peoples across Australia developed hunting systems of real sophistication for kangaroo, refined over an immense span of time and tuned precisely to local country. Hunters used spears, thrown with a spear thrower, the woomera or murala in some languages, which dramatically extends range and force. They used boomerangs and clubs. They used nets, such as the Ngaltawadi, and pitfall traps set on known routes. and they ran coordinated group drives, with people positioned across the landscape to move animals toward waiting hunters. Alongside that came firestick farming, careful, deliberate, small-scale burning that cleared undergrowth and encouraged fresh green pasture, which drew kangaroos to predictable places. The land was managed so that the animals would come. It's a system that sustained both people and kangaroo populations across thousands of generations. Not luck, deep, tested, transmitted knowledge of a canteen. And T, you're doing beautifully. There's nothing to work out here. You're simply being told true things in the dark, which is one of the oldest and kindest things people do for each other. Let your breathing settle into whatever rhythm it wants. T.S. And nothing was wasted. Kangaroo was central to both diet and material culture. The meat was cooked in ground ovens, a pit, hot coals, the animal covered and left to roast slowly for hours. Bones became tools and weapons. Sinew was worked into strong string and binding. Skins and fur became cloaks and coverings against cold nights. Even the smallest pieces had purpose. Jaws and fibulae used as engravers and as flaking tools for working stone. Precise instruments, made from an animal that had already fed a family. And the kangaroo was more than a resource. In many cultures it is an ancestor, held in story and law and ceremony, understood as a living gift within a web of obligation that runs both ways. You take and you are bound by what you take. That relationship continues today. Now, back to the mob at dusk, because young kangaroos play. Juveniles wrestle. Mostly young males, though sometimes females too. They chase each other, rear up, lock forearms, push and grapple and shove. The same motions adults use in earnest, but restrained, softened. Nobody is trying to win. Boxing, people call it, and it looks almost comic. Two young animals up on their tails, batting at each other's shoulders, breaking off, starting again. But it's real work. It builds strength and balance, teaches them the reach of their own bodies, and teaches them the far harder skill of reading another animal. When to press, when to yield, when a thing has gone far enough. And later, grown, the males will use those same movements for something serious. Real contests over access to females where the outcome matters. The game was the rehearsal. Let that scene fade gently. Two young animals in long grass at dusk, play fighting without any stakes at all. Then stopping. Then settling down to graze beside each other as the light goes. Let the light go where you are, too. Kangaroos also have voices, softer and more varied than most people expect. Their calls form a graded repertoire, shifting with context. Between a mother and her joey there are soft clucks and clicks. Quiet contact sounds, meaning little more than here I am, and there you are. It's the gentlest thing in the whole vocabulary. For alarm or aggression there are guttural coughs, grunts and growls, low, rough, carrying. When cornered or threatened, they hiss. And in genuine distress, or at the peak of a serious fight, the sound rises into a high screech or scream. startling from an animal usually so quiet. Most nights, though, none of that. Most nights, it's just the clicking of mothers and joeys keeping track of each other across the dark, and the sound of grass being eaten. And the last fact tonight belongs to the males. During contests and dominance displays, male eastern and western gray kangaroos produce a loud cough growl, a rough, forced, coughing bark, repeated as they size each other up. It carries across open ground and does much of the work of a fight before any fight begins. Often that's enough. One animal hears it, weighs it, and moves off. But the same animals make a very different sound in courtship. Approaching a female, a big male may produce a soft clucking, a low chuckling noise, quiet, almost conversational, entirely unlike the growl. The same throat, the same night, two completely different things to say. That's where we'll leave them. A mob spread across dark grass, someone clucking softly, someone else answering, the whole group keeping loose company until dawn. Tonight you learned that kangaroos live in mobs from a handful to over 100, with shifting membership and a dominant boomer. That most wild kangaroos show a population-level preference for the left forelimb. That this handedness appears in upright bipedal species but not in quadrupedal tree kangaroos, suggesting standing up drives it. That the kangaroo and emu support the Australian coat of arms, popularly because neither moves backwards. That populations in commercial harvest zones run to millions, around 3.8 million Western greys in 2020. That Aboriginal peoples hunted kangaroo with spears and woomeras, boomerangs, nets, pit traps, and coordinated drives, and shaped the country with fire stick farming to sustain them. That every part of the animal was used: meat, bone, sinew, fur, jaws, and fibulae as tools, within cultural frameworks that honor the kangaroo as ancestor and gift. That juveniles play fight to build strength and social skill. That their calls range from soft mother, joey clucks to coughs, growls, hisses, and screams. And that males cough growl in contest and chuckle softly in courtship. You don't need to keep any of it. Let the mob move off across the dark grass without you. This next stretch goes further inside than we've been so far, into teeth and blood, and the coiled instructions that build a kangaroo in the first place. Sounds like a lot. It isn't. It's just a voice describing small hidden things while you lie still in the dark. Breathe in and let it go. A kangaroo's front teeth never stop growing. Its incisors, the cutting teeth at the front of the jaw, used for cropping grass close to the ground, grow continuously through life, replacing themselves as fast as the work wears them away. Grass is abrasive. It carries fine silica that grinds enamel down, so the tooth simply keeps arriving. And because it grows steadily, it keeps a record. The growth lines and where patterns laid down in those teeth can be read afterwards to estimate how old an animal was, and in some cases even to infer whether it was male or female. A life written in a tooth at the speed of grass. Further back in the jaw, something even stranger happens. Kangaroo molars travel. As the front molars wear down under years of grinding, they don't simply stay in place and fail. They loosen and drop out, and the teeth behind them shift slowly forward along the jaw to take their position. New molars erupt at the back, and the whole set migrates gradually forward across the animal's life. It's called molar progression, and it works like a conveyor belt. Worn teeth leaving at the front, fresh teeth joining at the back, the grinding surface continually renewed. Most species carry a fixed set that simply moves along and eventually runs out. But in one tiny rock wallaby, the naberlek, a small animal of the Northern Territory escarpments, the belt never ends. It keeps erupting extra molars throughout its life, an apparently unlimited supply, because the grasses it eats are so full of grit that nothing else would survive. Teeth arriving forever for as long as their need. D. You're doing so well. Let your jaw go slack. Most people hold tension there without ever noticing. Let the teeth come apart slightly. Let the tongue rest low in the mouth. There. That's bet. Our lifespans vary from species to species in ways that follow how and where they live. Eastern gray kangaroos typically live around 8 to 12 years in the wild. Western grays reach roughly 9 to 13. Red kangaroos in good country and good seasons can make it to around 16. Those are ordinary numbers and they hide a lot. A wild kangaroo's life is bounded by rainfall and drought, by predators, by the slow failure of teeth in old age. But in a good stretch of years, an animal can grow old out there, moving across the same country season after season, knowing where the water is, aging quietly in a mob that keeps reforming around it. Now, something almost invisible. When researchers sequenced the genome of the Tamar wallaby, a small macropod, a close relative of the big kangaroos, they found immune genes that don't exist in animals like us at all. Marsupials carry their own distinct immune equipment, including genes for a family of powerful antimicrobial peptides called cathelicidins. These are short molecules that attack bacteria directly, physically disrupting them, rather than waiting for the slower machinery of an immune response to organize itself. And their production is tied to lactation. They're expressed differently while a mother is nursing, appearing in the milk, chemical defense delivered straight into the pouch, to an animal too young to have any immune system of its own. Which is the answer to a question you might have had earlier. How does something born the size of a grain of rice, with no immune defenses, survive months in a warm, dark pocket? Its mother sends the defenses with the FO. OD, you're doing beautifully. You are entirely protected right now in your own way: walls, a roof, a locked door, a warm bed. Nothing is required of your vigilance tonight. Let it stand down. Let your whole body understand that it's SA. Faye. And that immune repertoire is enormous. When researchers scanned the genomes of 14 marsupial species, they found 130 cathelicidin genes altogether. Each species carries something like 5 to 15 of its own, and crucially, these are not versions of ours. They aren't the same genes modified. They're separate inventions, arising in the marsupial line after it split from ours over 160 million years ago. And they work. In laboratory tests, these peptides kill bacteria and fungi rapidly across a broad range, including some organisms that resist our own antibiotics, which is why they're being studied seriously as a source of new medicines. An entire pharmacology evolved in pouches to keep small, helpless animals alive in warm, damp darkness. We've barely started reading it. The genome itself is packaged unusually too. The Tamar wallaby carries a genome of roughly 2.9 to 3.3 billion base pairs, very close to the size of our own. But where we hold ours in 46 chromosomes, the Tamar holds its in just 16. 16 chromosomes. Very few, and each one very large, long, and comparatively simple in their arrangement. Marsupial chromosomes have this character generally: fewer, bigger, more conservative. Their overall structure has changed remarkably little across enormous spans of time, which makes them unusually readable. Researchers can look at a marsupial chromosome and see the ancient shape of mammalian genomes preserved in it, like an old map that was never redrawn. The same amount of information, simply kept in fewer, longer volume. Let yourself sink further now. You don't have to understand any of this. Nobody is going to ask. It's just true quietly whether anyone follows it or not. Like most of the best things, let one more breath go slower than the loss. Their sex chromosomes are strikingly small. In kangaroos, the X chromosome makes up only around 3% of the genome, where in placental mammals like us it's closer to 5. And the Y is tiny, often around 12 million base pairs. A small fragment carrying little more than the essential instructions for maleness. Our own X and Y took a different path, accumulating material, growing, becoming entangled in far more than sex determination. The marsupial versions stayed lean. They kept the core and let the rest alone. Two lineages, the same starting problem, and two very different answers, one elaborate, one minimal, both working perfectly well for 160 million years. Here's a small, strange detail about newborn joeys. Your red blood cells have no nucleus. Almost all mammals don't. Mature red cells eject the nucleus to make room, becoming simple flexible discs that exist only to carry oxygen. But a newborn kangaroo hasn't done that yet. A joey at birth has red blood cells that are almost entirely nucleated, still carrying their full instructions inside them, the way a fetus's cells do. And then, over roughly the first 30 days in the pouch, they're gradually replaced. The nucleated cells give way to the smooth anucleate ones of an adult animal, one generation of cells at a time, in the dark. So while the joey lies there doing apparently nothing, warm, attached, silent, its blood is quietly being exchanged for a different kind of blood. Enormous change, invisibly, in something that appears completely still. Rest here a moment. That's happening in you as well. Repair, replacement, quiet maintenance. All of it running best while you're asleep and paying no attention whatsoever. Doing nothing is when most of it gets due. There seems to be a ceiling on how big a hopper can be. Remember those giant short-faced kangaroos from the very beginning? Some of them at around 240 kilograms. When researchers model the biomechanics of hopping at that scale, something clear emerges. It doesn't work. Past roughly twice the mass of the largest kangaroo alive today, the forces involved become impossible. Fast hopping generates ground reaction forces that already push hindlimb bones and tendons close to their breaking limits, and those forces climb faster than the tissue can be strengthened to bear them. Beyond a certain size, a single hard bound would risk destroying the leg that made it, which explains why those giants likely walked instead, striding one great foot after the other, some perhaps on all fours. Not because hopping was beneath them, but because at their size it was no longer available. Every body has a limit built into it. Past a point, the same beautiful trick simply stops being safe. And the last fact tonight is about the mind inside all this. Many marsupials have small, smooth brains, but not all of them. Among the diprotodonts, the group that includes kangaroos, some species have brains that are relatively large, with a high proportion given over to neocortex, the outer layer associated with perception, learning, and flexible behavior. And in Western gray kangaroos, that surface is actually folded. Gyrencephalic, the word is a wrinkled cortex with ridges and grooves, packing more surface area into the same space, the same solution our own brains use. It's easy to think of kangaroos as simple animals, all legs and reflex. They aren't. Behind those wide-set eyes sits a substantial, folded, actively processing brain. Mapping a landscape, tracking a mob, remembering water, reading other animals' intentions across a darkening field. There's someone in there. There always was. Let's gather it up and put it down. Tonight you learned that kangaroo incisors grow continuously, recording age and sometimes sex in their wear, that their molars migrate forward through life like a conveyor belt, with the tiny Naberlek erupting new ones indefinitely. That Eastern greys live 8 to 12 years, Western greys 9 to 13, and reds up to around 16. That marsupials carry unique immune genes, including cathelicidins delivered through milk into the pouch. That across 14 marsupial species there are 130 such genes, each species holding 5 to 15 of its own, none of them ours. That the Tamar wallaby packs a human-sized genome into just 16 large chromosomes. That marsupial sex chromosomes are unusually small, the X about 3% of the genome, the Y often around 12 million bases. That newborn joeys have nucleated red blood cells, replaced over their first 30 days. That biomechanics sets an upper size limit on safe hopping, roughly twice today's largest. And that Western gray kangaroos have relatively large brains with a folded cortex. None of it needs keeping. Let the small hidden things carry on without you. They're better at it when nobody's watching. This stretch is about people, how we have understood kangaroos, and what we have made of that relationship over a very long time. Some of it is ancient and sacred. Some of it is modern and practical. It's told plainly and gently, and there's nothing in it you need to carry. Breathe in and let it G. Across Aboriginal Australia, the kangaroo lives in the dreaming. Many indigenous nations hold kangaroo dreamings and kangaroo totems, known by different names in different languages, Marlu among them. These are not stories in the way that word is usually meant. They are law, frameworks that hold kinship, responsibility, land custodianship, and the proper way to behave, all bound together in one continuous system. For some clans, a kangaroo ancestor created both the animal and the people who share its lineage. To hold that totem is to be related to the animal, with all the obligation that relationship carries. Who you may marry, what you may hunt, what country you are answerable for, what you must protect. Much of this knowledge belongs to particular people and particular places, and is not for general telling. What can be said simply is this: for tens of thousands of years, the kangaroo has been not merely an animal here, but a relative and a lawmaker. And those dreamings are written into the land itself. In Anangu Chukurpa, from the western desert, the kangaroo ancestor moves across country, and in moving, shapes it. Water holes exist where the ancestor made them. Routes across the desert follow the path the ancestor traveled, and those routes are held in song, so that the singing of them is also the navigating of them. Song lines, they're often called in English. In errant traditions of the MacDonnell Ranges, the red kangaroo is bound to the Era spirit and its journeys by day and by night, tying particular sacred sites into one continuous account of how that country came to be. What this means is that the landscape is not scenery. It is a record. A range of hills, a soak, a particular rock. Each is evidence of something that happened, and a place where the law is still held. So when we've spoken across these nights about kangaroos crossing open country, understand that in many places those animals are moving through a landscape their ancestors made, along paths that are also songs. You're doing so well. There's nothing to hold. Let the words move through you the way a song moves through country. Passing, complete, needing nothing from you. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow. Now to something much more recent and much more ordinary. Kangaroos support a substantial wild game industry in Australia. It began as pest control, landholders managing animals competing with livestock for grass and water, and grew into a regulated commercial harvest. Today, it contributes somewhere around 200 to 230 million US dollars a year to the Australian economy. It employs thousands of people, most of them in rural and remote areas where other work is scarce. And it supplies meat and hides to dozens of countries. It is, by most measures, the largest commercial harvest of wildland mammals anywhere in the world. The most valuable part of that trade is the leather. Kangaroo hide is remarkable material. It's exceptionally strong for its thinness. The collagen fibers in the skin run in a more uniform arrangement than in cattle hide, which makes it both light and tough. so it goes into high-performance footwear, particularly football boots, and into fashion goods and accessories, much of it destined for Europe. The meat is sold as lean, high-protein game, very low in fat, and increasingly marketed on those terms, along with a substantial pet food trade. Whatever one thinks of the industry, that is the shape of it. A large share of the value in the skin, the rest in the maya. Let yourself settle a little deeper. None of this is happening near you. It's simply information, arriving in a quiet room, in the middle of the night, and then leaving again. Let your hands go heavy. Let your jaw unclench. The harvest is bounded by quotas, and the quotas are strict. Each Australian state sets caps by species. In New South Wales and Western Australia, commercial quotas are typically limited to no more than 17% of the surveyed red kangaroo population, and no more than 15% for eastern greys, western greys, and wallaroos. Victoria works to a lower figure, no more than 10%, when populations sit below their long-term averages. Those percentages are ceilings, not targets. The actual take is usually well below them because it also depends on what the market wants in a given year. And the numbers behind those quotas come from counting. Management zones are surveyed regularly, mostly from the air, aircraft flying fixed transects while observers count animals. The results scaled up into population estimates for each zone. It's laborious, and it's repeated year after year, which is what makes the long-term averages meaningful. Then there are trigger points. If a zone's population falls 1.5 to 2 standard deviations below its long-term mean, that is, if it drops clearly outside its normal range of variation, the quota is automatically reduced, often to 10%. And if numbers fall 2 or more standard deviations below average, a zone can be closed to harvesting entirely. It's a system designed to respond to drought, which in Australia is the thing that actually moves these populations. Numbers swing enormously with rainfall, climbing through good years, collapsing through dry ones, and the quotas are meant to move with them rather than against them. Whether that system works as intended is genuinely debated. Ecologists, animal welfare organizations, industry bodies, and government agencies disagree about survey accuracy, about welfare standards in the field, and about the sustainability of the whole enterprise. Those are real arguments held by serious people, and they aren't settled. You're doing beautifully. You don't have to resolve any of that tonight. There's nothing here for you to decide, and no position you need to take before you're allowed to sleep. Just let it pass. Let one more breath go out slowly. There's a second, separate system for landholders. Beyond the commercial harvest, farmers and property owners can apply for licenses to cull kangaroos for damage mitigation, where animals are eating pasture or crops, or damaging fences and infrastructure. This runs on its own rules. Maximum cull limits are set according to the size class of the property and the management zone it sits in, kept entirely separate from the commercial quota. A small holding gets a small allowance, a large station more. It's the least visible part of the picture and the hardest to audit. But it's part of how the total number is arrived at each year, alongside the commercial figures. None of this began recently. Europeans hunted kangaroos from the earliest days of colonization, first out of simple necessity, when imported food ran short and the settlements were hungry. Kangaroo meat kept people alive in the first years, and the value of the skin was recognized quickly. By the 19th century, hides and skins were being exported, and kangaroo leather had a reputation for durability that made it sought after for boots, harness, whips, and gloves. Anything that needed to be light and hard-wearing. So the modern regulated industry sits on top of something almost 2.5 centuries old. The rules are new. The trade is not. Let that recede now. History is a long way from this room. Whatever happened out there in other centuries is finished, and none of it is asking anything of you tonight. Sink a little further into the bed. Kangaroos were also among the first Australian animals Europeans put on display. When the Zoological Society of London opened its gardens in Regent's Park in 1828, the world's first properly scientific zoological garden, and the origin of the word zoo, kangaroos were part of the founding collection. Deliberately included and immediately among the star attractions. Imagine that. A cold, gray London park. Crowds in heavy coats gathered at a rail, and in front of them an animal from the other side of the planet, standing upright on its tail, entirely unlike anything anyone there had grown up with. For most of those people, it was the strangest living thing they would ever see. And the last fact tonight is the plainest one. Across everything, habitat loss as land is cleared, collisions with vehicles on country roads at dawn and dusk, commercial harvesting, and licensed culling. The dominant source of kangaroo mortality is us. Not drought, not dingoes, not disease. Human activity. That's simply true, and it sits alongside another true thing we covered a few nights ago. That the major species remain abundant, numbering in the millions, and are listed as least concern. Both facts are real at once. Abundance and pressure, together in the same landscape. The same doubleness we found right at the beginning, with the thriving greys and the vulnerable black wallaroo. It's worth knowing. It doesn't need to be carried into sleep. So end here instead. It's night now across Australia, and the heat has gone out of the ground, and millions of kangaroos are moving quietly across dark country, eating grass, keeping loose company, clicking softly to one another. Most of them will be fine. The country is very large and the night is very long, and they know it better than anyone. Let's gather it up and set it down. Tonight you learned that kangaroos are held in Aboriginal dreamings and totems as ancestors and lawmakers, encoding kinship and responsibility. That kangaroo dreamings map directly onto country. Anangu Chukurpa describing the Marlu ancestor shaping waterholes and songlines. Arrant traditions binding the red kangaroo to sacred sites in the McDonnell Ranges. That a commercial wild game industry contributes roughly $200 to $230 million a year and employs thousands in remote areas. That leather is its highest value product, prized for being light and exceptionally strong. that state quotas cap the take at around 17% for reds and 15% for greys and wallaroos, with lower limits elsewhere. That those quotas are set from aerial surveys, dropping or closing entirely when populations fall well below their long-term averages. That landholder culling for damage mitigation is licensed separately, by property size and zone. That Europeans have hunted kangaroos for meat and hides since early colonial times. That kangaroos were in the founding collection at London Zoo in 1828. And that human activity is now the dominant source of kangaroo mortality. You don't need to keep any of it. Let the dark country hold them for a while. Let it hold you too. This is the second to last of our nights together. This stretch is about weather, mostly how rain and drought move through these animals, and it ends somewhere unexpectedly lovely. Nothing to hold, nothing to follow. Breathe in and let it go. In red kangaroos, rain switches reproduction on. Think back to the paused embryos we spoke about, those tiny blastocysts, 70 to 100 cells held in suspension, waiting. This is what they're waiting for. When heavy rain falls across the inland after a long dry, females can come into estrus within about 2 weeks. 2 weeks from the first real downpour to a whole population beginning again. The grass responds, the animals respond, and reproduction resumes across thousands of square kilometers almost at once. And in prolonged drought, the opposite. Breeding shuts down entirely. Nothing new is started. The paused embryos simply stay paused, costing nothing, asking nothing, until the sky changes. It means a red kangaroo population isn't really running on a calendar. It's running on rainfall. The desert says when. Not all their relatives are so resilient. Some tree kangaroos, those quiet climbers in the rainforest canopy, are critically endangered. The tenkyle of Papua New Guinea's Torricelli Mountains was reduced to a few hundred animals by hunting and forest clearing, and survives now largely through a conservation program built with the local communities who once hunted it. And the Wundiwoi tree kangaroo is rarer still. It was known from a single specimen collected in 1928 on one mountain range in West Papua, and for 90 years nobody saw another. It was widely presumed extinct. Then in 2018, an amateur botanist, up a remote ridge looking for rhododendrons, photographed one in a tree. 90 years of absence, and it had been there the whole time, in a small patch of high forest, going about its life entirely unaware of being lost. You're doing so well. Let that be the thought you rest on for a moment. Something quietly surviving, unwitnessed, in the dark. Not needing to be seen in order to be all right. Let your breathing slow. Let your face soft. And some practical biology now of the kind that matters to people. Wild kangaroos can carry pathogens that concern anyone handling the meat. Salmonella turns up in fecal samples, around 3.6% of Western greys in one survey. And Toxoplasma gondii, a single-celled parasite, is present in wild populations too. Both are recognized public health considerations in the commercial meat industry, and both are managed the way such things always are, through hygiene during processing, cold chain handling, and proper cooking. Handled correctly, the risk is small. It's the same category of consideration that applies to any wild game anywhere. Not alarming, just one of the ordinary facts of the trade. Kangaroos in captivity face their own particular difficulties. When zoos and sanctuaries review what has made their macropods ill or killed them over the years, the same few things come up repeatedly: digestive disease, pneumonia, and disseminated toxoplasmosis. Coccidian parasites appear too, along with various opportunistic infections that take hold when an animal is already under strain. Stress is the common thread. A kangaroo evolved for enormous open country, in a smaller enclosure with unfamiliar company and unfamiliar ground, is an animal whose defenses are working harder than they were built to. It's why good macropod husbandry is so focused on space, on quiet, and on soft ground underfoot. Much of keeping them well is simply not asking too much of them. Rest a moment. That's a decent principle for a body in general. Space, quiet, soft ground, and not too much asked of it. You've got all four right now. Let your weight settle further into the B. D. That parasite deserves proper mention, because macropods are unusually vulnerable to it. Toxoplasma gondii completes its life cycle in cats, and it arrived in Australia when cats did, which in evolutionary terms was 5 minutes ago. Australian marsupials never encountered it during the long stretch of time in which resistance would normally develop. So they have very little. In documented outbreaks in red kangaroos, illness and death rates have been severe, with the parasite found through heart, lung, brain, and liver tissue. A mob can be hit very hard very quickly. It's one of those quiet consequences of the last 2 centuries that rarely makes the news. Not a dramatic story, just an old parasite meeting an animal with no history of it, in a country that used to have no cats at all. And then there is drought, which is the largest force in these animals' lives. In severe drought, everything moves in the same direction at once. Body condition falls as the feed disappears. Parasite burdens climb in weakened animals. Reproduction shuts down, and populations can decline by something between 25 and 60%, a quarter to well over half. Heat waves can be more abrupt still, producing mass mortality events where animals die in numbers over a matter of days. And repeated extremes compound. Immune function suppressed, breeding failing, less and less recovery between one hard year and the next. Set against that, though, is the thing we started this segment with. These animals are built for exactly this. Their whole reproductive design, the paused embryo, the 2-week response to rain, the milk that thins in poor seasons, is an adaptation to a country that has always swung violently between plenty and nothing. They crash. Then it rains and they come back. That cycle is very LD. You're doing beautifully. You don't have to fix anything you're hearing. Nothing about tonight requires your worry, and worry has never once helped a kangaroo. Let it go. Let one more long breath What's less certain is how far that resilience stretches. When researchers model kangaroo distributions against a warming climate, the projections are stark. A 2-degree rise could reduce suitable habitat for some species by somewhere between 48 and 89%. Under 6 degrees, models suggest up to around 96% of range could become unsuitable for certain species, with local extinctions likely, the antilopine wallaroo of the tropical north among the most exposed. The mechanism is water, mostly. Hotter country dries faster, surface water disappears for longer, and the distances between drinks become further than an animal can safely cross. These are models with all the uncertainty models carry. And these are also animals with extraordinary kidneys, paused pregnancies and saliva cooling, which is a formidable set of tools. What the projections describe is a limit being approached, not a thing already decided. Let that rest now. It's a long way off, and it isn't tonight, and none of it belongs in a bedroom at this hour. Set it at the edge of the room with everything else you're not carrying. Sink a little deep. Something quite different and rather wonderful to turn toward. There is a cluster of immune genes called the MHC, the major histocompatibility complex, which is essentially how a body distinguishes itself from everything that isn't itself. In humans, mice, and virtually every mammal studied, these genes sit together in one tight neighborhood on a single chromosome. It's one of the most conserved arrangements in mammalian genetics. The Tamar wallaby ignores this entirely. Its class 2 and class 3 genes, its antigen processing genes, its framework genes, those cluster on chromosome 2 as you might expect. But the classical class 1 genes, the ones that display what's happening inside a cell for the immune system to inspect, have been split away completely and scattered across at least 6 other chromosomes. Nobody has found this anywhere else. The most conserved neighborhood in mammalian immunity, dismantled and distributed, in an animal that is perfectly healthy. It's a good reminder that there was never only one way to build a mammal. We simply happen to be familiar with ours. And the last fact of this segment brings us back to the mind. We ended a few nights ago with the folded cortex of the western gray kangaroo. There's more to that story. When researchers count neurons in the isocortex of red kangaroos and Parma wallabies, the densities they find overlap with those of placental mammals. Not lower, not a diminished marsupial version. Comparable. And the internal pattern is familiar too. Neuron density is lower toward the front of the cortex and higher toward the back, near the occipital pole, the same rostral to caudal gradient found in primates, including, as it happens, in you. For a long time, marsupials were quietly assumed to be lesser, earlier drafts, simpler machines. That assumption keeps failing on contact with evidence. What's actually there is a different design of comparable sophistication, arrived at independently over 160 million years. So the kangaroo standing at dusk with its ears turning is not a simple animal running on reflex. It's a densely wired, actively thinking creature, built to another plan than ours, to a similar standard. Let's gather it up and set it down. Tonight you learned that heavy rain can trigger ovulation in red kangaroos within about 2 weeks, while drought shuts breeding down entirely and holds embryos in diapause. That some tree kangaroos are critically endangered, the tenkyle, and the wondiwoi, which was presumed extinct for 90 years before being photographed in 2018. That wild kangaroos can carry salmonella and toxoplasma, managed through hygiene and proper cooking. That captive macropods most often suffer digestive disease, pneumonia, and toxoplasmosis, with stress underlying much of it. That macropods are highly susceptible to Toxoplasma gondii, which arrived with cats and can devastate a mob. That severe drought can cut populations by 25 to 60%, with heat waves causing mass mortality. That modeling suggests 2 degrees of warming could remove 48 to 89% of suitable habitat, and 6 degrees far more. That the Tamar wallaby scatters its class 1 MHC genes across at least 6 chromosomes, unlike any other mammal known. And that marsupial cortical neuron densities match those of placental mammals, with the same front-to-back gradient found in primates. None of it needs keeping. It's raining somewhere out there tonight, and the grass is coming, and everything that was waiting will start a guy. And here we are at the last one. We've been traveling a long way together, across deserts and rainforests, into pouches and kidneys and chromosomes. Tonight we'll finish. Some of it will be new, and some of it will be revisiting old friends one last time before we let them go. There's nothing left to learn. Just a little more company and then rest. Breathe in slowly and let it G. Let's begin where the mob is loudest, which is to say, not very. Kangaroos have a real vocabulary, and we've met most of it. Grunts and coughs for alarm, hisses and growls when threatened or squaring up. And underneath all of that, the soft sounds. Clicks and clucks, exchanged mostly between mothers and their young. What's worth noticing, now that we know so much else about them, is the balance of it. In an animal this large, with this much power in its legs, almost the entire vocal life is quiet. The loud sounds are for emergencies and for contests, rare things. The everyday sound of kangaroos is a soft clicking in the dark. They are, for the most part, a whispering species. And that clicking does specific work. A female's low clicking or clucking functions almost like a homing signal. When a joey needs to find its way back to her, in dense vegetation, in poor light, in the confusion after something has startled the mob, she calls and it navigates to the sound. Picture that particular moment. Something has moved through the grass. Animals have scattered. And then, in the settling quiet afterward, a mother standing still and clicking softly, over and over, so that a small animal somewhere out there can find its way home. That's a sound that exists purely to say, here, I'm here, come back, you're doing so well. Let that be what carries you down. Something steady, saying here over and over until you don't need to hear it anymore. Let your shoulders release. Let your jaw go loose. Now something we haven't covered, Males and females are built very differently. In red kangaroos, the difference is dramatic. Males range from around 22 to 92 kilograms. Females from about 17 to 39. At the top end, that's close to 2 to 1. A big male can be more than twice the weight of a large female. And the difference isn't spread evenly. Males carry it in the shoulders, chest, and forelimbs, proportionally much heavier upper bodies, built for grappling with other males. Old boomers become extraordinarily developed through the arms and chest, in a way females never do. Eastern and Western greys show the same pattern, slightly less extreme, at around 1.8 or 1.9 to 1. There's also something unusual here. Male red kangaroos keep growing throughout their lives. They never quite stop. So the largest animal in a mob is almost always the oldest, size and age and status all rising together, slowly, across 16 years. And here's one we met before on a much earlier night, worth one last visit. Kangaroos swim well. Pursued, they'll go straight into rivers and floodwater without hesitation, propelling themselves with the tail while the hind legs move independently. The only time those legs work separately rather than together. And in deep water, a hunted animal can turn and defend itself, holding a pursuer under with its forepaws. But set the drama aside tonight, because that's not mostly what water means to them. Mostly, water is where they drink at dusk, where they stand in the shallows on a hot evening, where the grass stays green longest. The escape is the rare case. The ordinary case is a kangaroo at the edge of a waterhole in the last light, drinking and then lifting its head to least. And rest here a while. You've done the hard part of the day already. There's nothing left in it that requires you. Let your breathing slow further. It knows the way down. And now, one of the most endearing things kangaroos do. Red kangaroos sometimes lie on their backs. Not curled, not on their side. Flat on the back, with the legs held up in the air, entirely relaxed. They do it while resting in open ground or in shade, and it's a genuine posture, recorded and described by researchers, not a one-off oddity. It's partly about heat, exposing the thinly furred belly, where blood vessels run close to the surface, to moving air or to shade. And it's partly, as far as anyone can tell, just comfortable. There is something wonderful about an animal capable of crossing a plain at 70 kilometers an hour, choosing to lie on its back in the dirt with its feet in the air. Complete surrender. Nothing held. You could try something like it yourself right now in your own way. Palms up. Legs uncrossed, nothing braced. They also make their own cool ground. In hot weather, a kangaroo will scrape at the surface soil with its forepaws, clearing away the top layer that's been baking in the sun all day until it reaches the cooler earth beneath. Then it settles into that shallow depression and lies against it. They're called hip holes, and you can find them in shaded country. Smooth, scooped hollows under trees, worn in over long use, sometimes returned to day after day. It's a beautifully simple piece of physics. Heat moves from the warmer thing to the cooler one on contact. so a body pressed against cool soil sheds warmth continuously, without any water lost and no effort at all. An animal lying in a hollow it dug itself, in the shade, in the middle of a burning afternoon, quietly giving its heat to the grue. "Andy, you're doing beautifully. That's very close to what you're doing now. A warm body against a cool surface, letting go of what it doesn't need in a shaded, quiet place. Let it happen. You don't have to help. Water and how little of it they need. Large macropods get by on remarkably little free water compared with placental mammals of similar size. Much of what they need comes from the plants they eat. Grass carries a great deal of moisture, especially at dawn when dew is on it, and from metabolic water produced inside the body as food is broken down. But low need is not no need. In heat waves and droughts, access to drinking water becomes critical. Evaporative cooling spends water. The saliva licking we spoke about has a price, and it must be repaid. And beyond drinking, standing or lying in water is itself a cooling strategy when the air offers nothing. So during the hardest weeks, kangaroo distribution tightens around whatever water remains. The country empties and the animals draw in toward the few places still holding. And now the thing we followed across 2 nights, the methane. Kangaroos ferment their food in a foregut chamber much as sheep and cattle do, and yet in controlled trials with the same diet they emitted almost no methane at all. Negligible amounts in respired air, and total output far below the ruminants beside them. Same process, same raw material, completely different result. It's one of those findings that seems impossible until you look at who's actually doing the work. RK, which is where the last piece falls into place. When researchers went looking for methanogens, the microbes that make methane, in the foreguts of eastern gray and red kangaroos, using genetic surveys sensitive enough to detect even small populations, they often couldn't find them at all. The genes simply weren't there. But another gene was present in every single animal. FTHFS, the marker for acetogenesis, the pathway that takes hydrogen and carbon dioxide and makes acetate instead. So this isn't a kangaroo suppressing methane production. There's frequently nothing there to suppress. The community inside them was assembled differently from the start. No methane makers, acetate makers throughout, hydrogen routed into fuel rather than released into the sky. A whole ecosystem living inside an animal wired the other way. Let yourself go heavier now. That's the last of the science. Everything from here is just farewell. Let one more breath out as slow as you will. And the 100th fact is where we came into their story. In 1828, when the Zoological Society of London opened its gardens in Regent's Park, the first properly scientific zoo in the world, kangaroos were in the founding collection. Among the very first Australian mammals most Europeans ever laid eyes on. Think about what they saw at that rail. An animal standing on 2 legs and a tail, enormous feet, a pouch with a face in it. Nobody there knew about the paused embryos, or the 2 milks, or the tendons returning energy with every bound, or the folded brain behind those wide-set eyes. They just saw something impossible and stood looking at it in the cold. And here we are, nearly 200 years on, at the other end of all that looking, knowing about acetogenic bacteria and cathelicidins and the concentration of red kangaroo urine, and still not quite at the bottom of it. That's what 100 facts buys you. Not a finished picture. Just a much better sense of how much is th. So the last gathering up. Tonight you learned that the kangaroo's vocal life is mostly quiet, with clicks and clucks beneath the rarer coughs, growls and hisses. That a mother's clicking works as a homing signal for a lost joey. That males are far larger than females, up to 2 to 1 in reds, carrying it in the shoulders and forelimbs, and never quite stopping their growth. That they swim strongly and will defend themselves in deep water, though water mostly just means drinking at dusk. That red kangaroos sometimes lie flat on their backs with their legs in the air. That they dig hip holes to reach cool soil and shed heat into the ground. That they need less free water than comparable placentals, but that access still becomes critical in heat. That they emit almost no methane despite fermenting like ruminants. That methanogens are often entirely undetectable in their stomachs, while the acetogenesis gene is present in every animal. And that kangaroos stood in the founding collection at London Zoo in 1828. And that's 100. 100 true things about an animal that hops across a continent on borrowed spring, carries its children in a pocket, pauses its pregnancies until it rains, makes 2 different milks at once, cools itself by licking its own arms, and lies on its back in the dirt with its feet in the air. You don't have to remember a single one of them. That was never the point. The point was to have somewhere gentle to put your attention while your body did the quiet work of letting go. And if you fell asleep somewhere around the tree kangaroos and never heard the rest, then this worked exactly as it was meant to. It's night out there now. The heat has left the ground. Somewhere in the red center a mob is moving out onto the plain to feed, ears turning, clicking softly to one another, in no hurry at all. They'll be there tomorrow night and the night after. They've been doing this for a very long time, and they'll carry on doing it whether or not anyone is watching. You can stop watching now. Let your breathing go. Let the desert go dark. Good night.